Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week is a simple charcoal landscape sketch, and the materials I'm using are pretty basic as well. So you can see it's just fine charcoal, it's a willow charcoal, a kneaded eraser, and just some paper, and it's just a simple sketchbook. There's nothing fancy about it. The only other thing really that I'm using is a little bit tissue paper, just for smudging some of the charcoal. You can use your hands and your fingers to smudge the charcoal. The only thing is, so a charcoal can be pretty messy, and also you can end up with fingerprints in the final drawing if you're using your fingers to smudge. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I suppose it depends on your style of drawing. If you're going for something slightly more abstract and contemporary, then maybe a few fingerprints in the final drawing isn't a bad thing. It might add a bit of variety or uniqueness to the drawing. But as I say, I use a little piece of tissue paper. Because of the paper that I'm using is just normal sketchbook paper, it's pretty easy to smudge the charcoal. It's pretty easy to move it around. And you can see I'm using the tissue paper here just to smudge it. And then you can build up layers on top of each other, which is useful, and you can create interesting effects that way. If you are using a more fancy paper, a more expensive paper, something like a coated paper that you might use for soft pastels, you could use that for charcoal as well, but you won't be able to smudge the charcoal to the same extent, because those coated papers, or sometimes you get it's almost like a fine sandpaper, they have a very porous surface. So once the charcoal gets in there, it's pretty much stuck, and it's very difficult to move it around or to erase it. So in many ways, the cheaper paper is actually better for doing charcoal sketches, I think. The composition for this is also pretty basic. It's just, if you think, it's like a country road or a country lane, and it's just going off into the distance. So it's using linear perspective and a single vanishing point on the horizon. Like me, I'm sure you've seen thousands of drawings and paintings that look sort of like this. Lots of artists have used it for many different paintings and drawings. But it kind of works because it suggests that feeling of depth in the painting. Sometimes it's a bit more subjective, but sometimes if you have like a road or something going into the painting, people sometimes feel that it makes the painting more open, that they can go into the painting. If you had a hedgerow across the front of the painting, it's almost like a barricade or something that stops people feeling as though they can get into the painting. I don't know how scientific that is, or if that's just subjective ideas and opinions, but some people say this, and you'll see it in textbooks and things. Maybe you should also say at this stage, I'm focusing on larger shapes rather than lots of details, because I always think with a drawing or a painting as well, the first thing you're trying to do really is establish a composition. You can always add in details and things later on. This drawing is also a little bit different to most of my landscape drawings and paintings, because I put in that little sort of building. The thing about putting in buildings and people and animals as well is they can quickly become a center of interest or a sort of focal point in the drawing. Anything where you have sort of contrast can lead to that part of the painting standing out, or that part of the drawing standing out. So in the case of the building, it has very angular shapes, whereas the rest of the landscape is mostly more organic shapes. So that makes the little building stand out more. Also, the roof is dark compared to a lot of the surroundings, so again, the contrast and values makes that part of the drawing stand out. There's nothing wrong with having a center of interest or making things stand out in that way, as long as you're doing it sort of in a purposeful way, in an intentional way, and it doesn't just happen by accident. So at this stage then, the composition is established, most of the main masses are sort of in there. And really at this point then it's just adding in some details or suggesting some details. And this is where I start really using the kneaded eraser. The kneaded eraser is really good with charcoal. It's very good at lifting off the charcoal and exposing the white paper underneath. You don't have to do this. Some people will use crayons or white pastels instead, or a combination of both. The kneaded eraser also, you can shape it quite easily because it has that kneaded sort of texture, so you can shape it into a point or into a rounded shape, and different shapes that you can create different marks with. Maybe one other thing is, one of my ideas is not to create too many details, just little bits here and there, just to add in interest. If you try and draw in 1,000 different blades of grass, first of all, it's going to take a long time, and secondly, the final result might not actually look that good. It might look a bit weird. I think if you can put in a few details, suggest a few details, the person looking at the drawing and painting will, in their mind, they'll sort of fill in the other parts by themselves. You don't need to actually do it for them, I don't think. Unless you're going for sort of a photorealist type of approach. So this is the drawing then. It's pretty much finished. Just a few more smudges and adding in a few little details. As again, always got to think, when do I stop adding in the little details? You get to a point where you're maybe not improving the drawing anymore. So I guess this is the point I reached at. I reached this point and I decided enough is enough, and that was the final drawing. As I say, very simple composition and things, but it's good fun using the charcoal. And once you have something like this, a little sketch, you can always, if you wanted to, turn it into a painting, whether it's oil or watercolor or whatever. You've got the basic idea, the basic composition. You've got values. Really all you have to add in then is color. So certainly thinking about composition and ideas for paintings, charcoal is quite a good medium to work with. I do have some extra notes on this, some extra ideas, which I'm going to make available to people. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that yet. I did mention before about maybe starting Patreon. I might think about that. But in the next video or the next couple of videos, I'll give more information about these things. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. I hope it was useful, and hopefully see you in the next video.